So thank you so much for joining the Delaware Takeover night of Venture Cafe Philadelphia. I'm Tracy Brala. I'm the Executive Director for Venture Cafe Philadelphia. Venture Cafe is housed within the University City Science Center in Philadelphia, and I also have another title there, which is VP of Ecosystem Development. And so tonight is really kind of right up my alley because it's really thinking about all of the great things that are happening in Delaware and how do we ultimately do a better job of collaborating across the ecosystems. And half the time it's about familiarity and recognizing the resources that are available. So tonight we have what I'm hoping are 4 panelists. So we're still waiting for one to join us, but we can go ahead and get started with our 3 panelists that are here. And I'll ask each of you to introduce yourself and your company and just tell us a little bit about your organization and maybe, a quick story as to why Delaware in the introduction. Erica, you're to my right, so I'll ask you to start first if you don't mind.
Sure. My name's Erica Nemser. I'm the CEO of Compact Membrane Systems, and we do chemical separations, tough chemical separations, in pharmaceuticals, power gen, petrochemicals, and refining. So I guess the why Delaware is the easiest, which is it's a big chemicals and materials space. So being able to hire great talent and work with a number of companies in that space, it makes a lot of sense. We can still be very connected to the Philadelphia ecosystem. I was a Penn grad student and lived in Philadelphia for a really long time. So I sort of have found myself going back and forth. Prior to being CEO of CMS, I was a management consultant actually in Philadelphia and in New Jersey. So a lot of my experiences in pharmaceuticals and that whole space. So again, that tends to be like more of a regional footprint. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you. Patrick, do you want to go next?
And as great as Delaware is, I just met Erica last week and we've had a great conversation. So good to see you again, Erica. So again, Patrick Callahan. I'm one of the founders of Compass Red Data. We're a data lab. We do data science, artificial intelligence, predictive analysis, analytics, that kind of thing. Prior to this, I had another company called the Archer Group here in Wilmington. We started in our basements and then grew it. It's an advertising agency that was focused strictly on digital, doing work for like the Wawas of the world and JP Morgan and that kind of stuff here in Delaware. I sold the company and then moved out to San Francisco to try to start this one, working with a lot of companies like Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr, analyzing their data. Found it very difficult to grow a company out there for a lot of different reasons. One of it, the cost of doing business out there, the cost of getting talent, the access to the different people that you need in your ecosystem to grow a company. And I could go into details on that. It's a fun story, but we ended up moving back to Delaware and it quickly grew a lot faster. We had an office in Philadelphia, or have one, there as well, right next to the Venture Cafe in the CIC building, which gives us close access to some of the universities there, so Drexel, Penn, Temple. But then our second office where I'm sitting right now is in the CSC station, about 5 feet away from the train station. So it's a 25-minute train ride at the most from door to door. And that's given us the ability to have a great quality of life, access to some of the largest corporations in the world where their operations sit right here, and then just a reasonable price of doing business. And I guess the best thing is that you're about one step away from everyone in the state. And so getting to know people is 10 times easier when you have access to that kind of group. So it's a very welcoming place to be. So I'll leave it at that.
That's great. Franchessa, if you would like to unmute and tell us a little bit about your business and why Delaware, that would be terrific.
Yeah, so my name's Franchessa Sayler, and I'm the president and CEO of Thrupore Technologies. We make porous carbon, and we make that for various different different applications, but we started out in chemical catalyst, and now recently we are pivoting to antiviral air treatment. So the company actually started while I was a graduate student at the University of Alabama. So I spun it out of UA, and then my husband got a job up here with Gore. So we relocated, and that was actually when the company really started taking off. And it was all due to the community, the community local ecosystem in Delaware. The chemical space, the contacts. I mean, the ability to. We're literally all one step of separation, right? So it's so easy to find somebody with the right background, with the right whether it's hiring or consultants. A lot of the things that you need to succeed as a small business, especially in the tech space, I think around here it's all right here.
That's great. Thank you. Our fourth panelist, I've seen and heard in the background, Sumedh Surwade, who is from SAS Nanotechnologies, unfortunately is having a power outage in his laboratory. And so I don't think he's going to be able to join us tonight. So I think we'll have to represent Delaware. You'll all have to represent Delaware on his behalf. Maybe at some point, if the power gets back on, he'll be able to join. But as of right now, I think it's going to be just us. The year, it's been a year like no other. And so I'd love to explore with you what has been the greatest opportunity for you in 2020 and your respective companies. Has there been a positive? And then has there been a negative associated with 2020? Have you had to pivot? What has it looked like? Franchessa, let's start with you.
Yes. So an easy question is yes. It has definitely been a year for us. So we were right about to sign our first contract, our first big manufacturing deal, get a partner on. Everything was going great. And then COVID hit, and all of the chemical companies that I work with put all of their long-term projects on hold, which is basically where the chemical catalyst fits into things. So, and that was for a year. They all of them said at least for a year. So, in an industry that's very risk adverse, we were floundering. We were able to get the PPP loan and the EIDL loan, and that allowed us to survive. And then we put our heads around, pivoting, and wrote some grants, and we were able to win a National Science Foundation grant to make these antivirals for air treatments. And what's really helped us is the NSF grant has been fantastic, but it's been Delaware. I mean, I have been able to contact people. I've got the Delaware, EPA, the DNREC on the line to get the EPA approvals of the product, help us get the right applications in, help us get the right EPA consultants. We are going to be testing this product in a building, in a 25,000 square foot office building from Emory Hill. They're donating a building for us. December 15th. This could not happen anywhere else. This is only Delaware type of things. And yeah, we were able to also win an innovation grant with Newcastle County in order for us to release the product in Delaware first. So that money is giving us all of the regulatory and all of the testing needed to actually put it into facilities. And because of the ecosystem here, it's been phenomenal. I've got every consultant just at an arm's length, every expert needed, and it's been wonderful.
Obviously, this is a commercial for Delaware in this group, which is
Seriously.
a night about Delaware, and consistently across all of the sessions. I think that's a theme that has emerged: just how supportive the ecosystem has been for all of the entrepreneurs, whether it's from a financial standpoint or a resources standpoint, like you were suggesting. Erica, talk to us a little bit about your 2020 and positives and negatives associated with what's happened over the course of the year.
Sure. So I'd say it's been different for the two different parts of our portfolio. So we have existing products and existing customers that we serve directly, or we serve OEMs that manufacture a product. And I would say and then we have our breakthrough innovative technology that is still in development, and it's in pilot mode. It's going into some new customers in pilot mode, slated for next year. So I'd say for the products that are in the market, we see the volatility that everyone is seeing, even though some of those things are going into places like power grid, which really don't move too much with market cycles, or one wouldn't think so. But we still saw what everyone is now hoping for, seeing a V-shaped recovery, and it doesn't seem to be appearing. But it's very difficult for our customers to predict what their sales are going to be, and so it's difficult for us. So I think in that way, it's been a little bit of a challenge to figure out when we have to manufacture, and things are just very volatile. I would say for the product that's in development, we have a version of Franchessa's story, but I would say it's been a little bit easier for us. Not on the Delaware side, but on the customer side. And by that, I mean that project, that separation technology goes into petrochemical and refineries plants. And those have limited the access to the plant. So it's slowing down a little bit of the work, because they need to keep their staff safe, because they need to continue to operate, because they're the source of all of the PPE in the world, right? So the operations of it have become trickier as they've tried to limit things. However, there's increased demand for that technology as a result of this. So what we're seeing is things that we were expecting to happen in 2024 and 2025 and 2026 happening this year, but then it runs into this barrier, this operational barrier. So we've got a little bit on each side. So I would just say we are really trying to be flexible, to roll with the punches, to be as candid as we can with our customers, to be as upfront as we can about what we can and can't do, and really to as much as we can bend over backwards for our customers, because we know that everybody who's got a business now is facing some of these challenges. So that's kind of where we are. And we've had to tighten our belts, like I think everyone else has, and to be really thoughtful about where we spend money. And I have to say, all of our personnel have been super professional and super capable in the face of a lot of uncertainty about what's going on there. So we really do have an awesome team.
Flexibility is definitely another theme that we've heard throughout the course of the evening.
Yeah, for sure.
Certainly as it relates to 2020. Patrick, how about you? At first blush, not knowing your business, I would think that potentially there was benefits that have been seen, but sometimes that's what's on the wall, what you think you see is maybe not always what's necessarily behind the curtain. So tell us a little bit about your 2020.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, from a business side of things, we've had to grow from, I think we were 12 when we started out in March, to 30 people now. Mm-hmm. And that wouldn't have happened without both sides of the line, and I say the boundary, Philadelphia and Delaware. And there are benefits from both. So on the Delaware side, I think we've all kind of touched on the leadership just wrapping their arms around their businesses, saying, how do we help? And they have obviously a less population pool to help. If I was sitting in San Francisco, LA would be is 5 times bigger than the whole state of Delaware. So you can grab the attention of some of the leadership to say, hey, look, I need some help, or I love, crisis breeds opportunity. We have an opportunity here to grow. And certainly they get behind you like some wind. On the Philadelphia side of things, the talent that we've been able to pull down without having to leave their houses, but some of them are still coming in. has been beneficial. Some of our work in Philadelphia has grown. It really is, if we took an eraser and erased that line between Delaware and Philadelphia, this is a really interesting ecosystem with the number of businesses, the amount of talent, and then the lifestyle on both sides of the region. So we've been able to benefit from both those things. And then a third benefit, so basically it's talent for the whole region, clients for the whole region. In Delaware, the ability to get the arms wrapped around us from our state leadership. But then a third benefit is more of a national side of things. I mean, we were able to work with some West Coast companies on some things that we're doing. And before I would have had to jump on a plane, and it would have just taken so much longer. So, and then how many of us, as attendees or anyone, we're getting tired of like the 16 coffees we had to go drive to every day. And now it's like, oh, just do a Zoom call. I mean, I'm not sure that's going to be coming back, but it's been really the challenging thing, I think, for us, and I think this goes for any business. We're not a maintained business, so where innovation is really key and critical as we grow. And so that water cooler talk, or you can't schedule that stuff, and that's been really hard. So, I put the onus is on me to make those. We do Scribble on Friday, or which is an online game, to create those moments of social and culture, so it makes it easier to pick up the phone and call someone and say, hey, I've got this idea, and do that kind of stuff. But it still is a challenge. I'm not sure Zoom will ever replace that at all.
I think that's a great point, Patrick. And I think that's going to be a challenge for every business everywhere going into the next year, is how fatigued are people going to be working in a little bit more isolation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had a pretty cohesive team and it carried forward, but it's not going to go on infinitely with Zoom, right? So
yeah, and I'm curious to how you're working on bringing those moments of inspiration, or if sometimes it just doesn't work. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can all learn from each other. And, from our perspective at the Science Center, we made the announcement, kind of to continue to extend working remotely, well into 2021. And that's challenging. I mean, it's challenging for everybody because, there is so much benefit in being able to have these conversations in person. I completely echo what you were saying, Patrick. I also kind of was crazy in the beginning of COVID because I didn't have to take the hour to get to the coffee and the hour to get home from the coffee. So I was like, oh, let's just add the coffees to the calendar. And, each one of those coffees has some, networking or follow-up that comes out of it, and, some additional thing. And I was working till, 10 or 11 o'clock every night, just trying to do follow-up, and learned pretty quickly that while it's easier to put them on the calendar, it's also about, making sure that there's still those ability to have the connections and the follow-up. I do want to start back with you and Patrick on this idea. So Venture Cafe's mission is connecting innovators to make things happen. And I'm struck that you have kind of feet in both the Philadelphia ecosystem as well as the Delaware ecosystem. And I'd love for you to kind of spitball some ideas on how we could collaborate better. And then obviously we'll extend the conversation to Erica and Franchessa as well.
They could do that, or how in general?
Philadelphia and Delaware, just from a general standpoint, you talked about erasing the line between the two. And for the most part, I mean, I just loved that idea because, we're so close together, and, probably, depending on different parts of the city, it's probably, takes as long to drive from North Philadelphia to, South Philadelphia, and as it does to drive to Delaware. And how do we kind of, race that imaginary line?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I know the answer. I tell you some things that have worked for me. One is, again, taking advantage of the moment. To me, a great source of inspiration for myself, as I get excited about the work that we're involved with, is the universities. And it has become so much easier for me to reach out to a professor just to ask what you're working on. And for me to tap into the Drexel of the world, the University of Delaware, DSU, Delaware State University, Wharton is just a click away. It's a Google search and then reaching out to them. And so that has helped me not look at oh, these are Delaware schools and these are Philadelphia schools. It's like, oh my gosh, let's look at this educational like dream we have in this region. It doesn't exist anywhere else. Maybe you see it up in Boston a little bit, but that's such a big place that this is a really good microcosm for the country. And so it's being able to get into them is easier. And then when I'm looking for resources of how can I grow my business and are there organizations out there to help, again, that line gets erased. And I've called on Ben Franklin partners to talk to them about, what can we be doing? We're in Delaware, we're Delaware based. What can we be doing better to promote our stuff to Philadelphia or get you guys involved down here? I mean, we can do this now. So, I mean, look at what we're doing right now. We've got a Philadelphia-based organization that's putting on something with Delaware, and it really didn't take. I mean, it took a lot. You guys prepare quite a bit, but it's a lot easier than having to drive or convert people to come up from Delaware type thing. That's one thought. I don't know. I'm really curious of others as well.
Yeah, me too. Erica, do you want to chime in?
Sure. I would build on what Patrick was saying, that I think it's about connecting on the problems that we're solving in the work that we're doing and seeing those communities come together. One of the things that we did when I came to CMS, I'm not the founder, I came after its inception. All of the recruiting was at University of Delaware, and we still do recruit a lot of chemical engineers from University of Delaware, but we've expanded to Villanova and to do and to Drexel and elsewhere in the region to look at exactly as Patrick was saying, right? Who are the folks that are committed or interested, and we can help move them to be committed to the Delaware Valley writ large, right? And a lot of the folks in our office, some are from Wilmington and moved to Philadelphia. Some are from Philadelphia, moved to Wilmington. So it's kind of pretty dynamic, and people think of it in one way. And similarly, I think there's an opportunity to do that in other circles of work and collaboration that we do, right? For us, it's material science. I've reached out, so I know individual companies and individual CEOs in material science and chemicals and things like that sit over the border. I myself live just outside of Philadelphia. So I think our individual network stretch. I think it's probably a great opportunity to say, how do we put some of those communities together in a little bit more that are related to the work we do, and the places that we're going for those kinds of connections. Do you know someone who knows this or that, or we're looking for a particular expertise, or someone who's been around the block on a particular problem? I find that when you're in a startup world, you're not in an organization of 10,000 people, right? Or 100,000 people, like a Pfizer or an Exxon. You're not likely to be able to tap someone inside your organization who's been facing the challenge or problem of the week that you're facing. But we all want to tap into those people. Somebody has been around the block. And if it's not someone who's an investor or someone who's an advisor or on the board of the company, right? You want to tap into those people quickly. And so, we've found ourselves building up our own network of those kind of folks. They tend to be around the same, let's call it industrial pivot points. So that's a great opportunity to go from there and sort of build up and strengthen those.
Thank you. Erica or Franchessa, any thoughts on collaboration opportunities?
Yeah, so I'd say, what was that? Can you hear me? Okay. I'd say about nearly all of my funding. So my venture capital funding, it's actually angel funding, comes from the Philadelphia area. So most of my investors most of them are in PA, around Philadelphia, and then I think I have one agency that's in New Jersey, so just across the river. And so yeah, I mean, they've been a big source of capital, right? When I was raising money a few years ago, it was difficult to find people who really understood. People understood, but they weren't really organized, I think, is the key. They didn't have these angel funds. There were people to pitch to, but they didn't really do earlier stage. Whereas in the Philadelphia area, there are a lot of different angel fund groups that you can go and pitch to. And then Ben Franklin, I use Ben Franklin all the time. That's where I have all my board meetings, or I did, right? You know, they're so close to the airport. I have a board member that flies in. And yeah, I mean, I still tap into some of their resources. You know, there's just experts everywhere. So, and I've actually been to the Science Center several times. So I enjoy that space as well, or, you know, did when it was live. And I look forward to coming back. A lot of the women entrepreneur events that, you know, were put on at the Science Center, I really appreciated that, and the networking. And then Robin Hood Ventures, who's I believe right upstairs from you guys. Yeah, I go there frequently as well. So I mean, it kind of bleeds into each other, you know, the ecosystem. And I know that those angels are trying to get down to Delaware as well. So I know Erica, we connected through Glenn Gaddy at Robin Hood Ventures. And well, I believe we had met before, but it's funny when somebody from outside, you know, tries to connect two people in Delaware. But yeah, so you know, I found that. And then the other thing that I found is interns. I found a lot of interns with the different universities in the Philadelphia area, specifically, you know, in the Wharton Business School, as well as the engineering departments.
That's great. Yeah, I would say from my perspective, you all have my commitment that this will not be the last of the connections that happens, because I do really think it is about being thoughtful and choiceful and strategic, and saying there's a lot that we can learn from each other. One of the other speakers was making reference to, you know, if you go to an event in Delaware, you go to 4 events, you see that, you know, by the 4th event, you've seen the same people. And the same can be said for Philadelphia too. And the reality is being able to introduce new folks into the ecosystem is something that we've been very choiceful in, from a venture cafe standpoint, in trying to make sure that we're always very cognizant of how do we bring different connections together. And I learned a lot tonight. So for me, it was such an educational night that I think that we will continue as a team to say, how do we continue to make those connections and opportunities? So one of my favorite questions, which you guys will be surprised because it wasn't one that you've seen, is what's your superpower? So as CEOs of your companies, I'm sure you're being challenged and tasked every day, but Franchessa, why don't you tell us what's your superpower?
So I would have to say it's kind of the way I approach problem solving and the way I think about things. I found that to be really key in innovating new products. It's diversity, right? It's people from different backgrounds, regardless of what they are, having different perspectives and thinking about things in a different way. And then getting those people into a room, or, you know, in a virtual setting, and just coming up with ideas and different approaches to solving problems. So I think both my personal way of viewing things and then the ability to coordinate that and draw that out of other people is how we've been successful.
Patrick.
That I think that's like a really important quality, especially now. Like I think that builds a better product. So I kind of laugh because my superpower is knowing that I'm the dumbest guy in the room of all the people that we've hired, and I hope it stays that way from here on out. Like there's you know, and a lot of them are, you know, in their 20s, and I'm double them. So it's I think that's the one thing, just the constantly needing to suck up the information, strive and learn from other people, and then just realizing that I am the dumbest, and that's a good thing. I think I tell my kids, I'm like, why do you say that? I was like, well, because then that means that we're constantly growing, and I think that's important. So I'll throw it over to Erica.
And humblest, probably too.
No.
Erica.
Sure. So I would say mine is usually about the vision, about seeing what could be and not what is. And then combining that with two things. One is not being intimidated when people say that's impossible, it's never been done before. So it may not have ever been done before, but that doesn't make it impossible, right? It just means that no one's ever done it. And then I would say the third piece of that stool is then what's the pathway to get there, right? So that you don't stumble through all the rocks and burn through all your time, effort, cash, whatever. What's the really, pulling on what Franchessa was talking about, what's the really creative and efficient way to get there? Learning and seeing connections to other problems and other solutions that people have used elsewhere, to be able to stand on the shoulders of those giants. Because like Patrick said, I know I'm not the smartest person facing any one problem. And so how to efficiently come up the learning curve and learn from others. I think those three I've probably used over and over and over again.
So this is the big heady question. So what legacy or lasting impact do you hope your work will have? Erica, would you like to start?
Sure. So, at this small scale, I hope our company is successful, obviously, and that the people at our company achieve the things they want in life through the experience of working with us. I would say the big picture for it is we're an advanced materials company innovating outside of a giant industrial company, right? That is something that is a relatively new phenomenon. You see Franchessa's also doing that. But if you look at the big innovations in material science and chemistry, for a very long time, those were the province of the Dows, the BASFs, the DuPonts, et cetera. 30 years ago, pharma faced a similar thing, and you saw biotech emerge as the place that innovation happened, right? And then those two found a symbiotic relationship between biotech and pharma to capitalize on both of their skills and capabilities. My greatest aspiration is that transformation occurs in an industrial world too, as these large companies are facing a similar challenge, that they've struggled with innovation and successfully innovating products and having really a breadth of exciting things in their R&D pipeline, that there starts to be successful models of innovative companies that can partner with them and bring things forward to success. So my aspiration is, one, that ecosystem emerges and industrials becomes a great place to innovate, and it emerges as a place where innovation is a partnership between small companies and big industrial players who have scale. It would, it's fun to be on the vanguard. I hope we're successful. I hope we move the needle forward at the big picture, and that we survive it. But that's my greatest ambition. We can at least contribute to that journey.
That's a wonderful answer, and I think that there is, so many of the larger corporations are thinking about what it's like to be innovative, and that their models didn't previously work, and there's a lot to be said about being a smaller organization and the nimbleness that you can have, and the close-knit nature that you can have. So I think that's a really great option. Franchessa.
Thanks. Yeah, I love Erica's answer, by the way. I've been participating on a panel to talk about some of the challenges, that small businesses face, and trying to almost tease out what that formula is, and communicate it and build it, really, because it's not formulaic yet, but one day hopefully it will be, right? Yeah, what I've always aspired to is really, there are so many people that I grew up with, that I'm related to, brothers, sisters, step brothers and sisters, and even, other family. And people think that everything has already been created. Like there is an entire, community of people that really do believe that there is no innovation left in the world. And I want to make sure that, you know, the next generation of scientists and entrepreneurs, and I want to help frame the thinking of that and fix that nothing's ever good enough. We're always learning. And that's what I want to help. I want to, you know, enable change in that view, you know, nothing's ever finite, right? There's infinite possibilities. So just don't limit yourself in how you think.
That's really inspirational. Thank you. Patrick, go ahead and top that. No,
yeah, I can't. Like, I have no idea how to top that. Ditto. You know, it was interesting, Erica, when you and I met on the video call a while ago, she was saying you had worked for McKinsey, and I'm a big fan of the history of McKinsey and Marvin Bower, who founded it. And one of his principles was that he was building a company that was going to be 10 times bigger beyond his years. So when he passed, he wanted that company to look amazing and it to be known when you walk in the room, and he succeeded. And so I'm building something that I may not see, and I hope I don't see it, because I want it to be 10 times bigger. And the thing about Marvin Bower too is that when he built that company, crazy enough, the management consulting didn't exist. It just started. And so it's really, really hard, as Franchessa said, like, there's innovation in this world, but it's really hard to do it, which is a good thing. It should be hard. And as we are building our company as you know, in this new data world, this new AI space, this is a new company. It's very, very hard to explain it to the customers. When they see it, they see the results of it and all that kind of stuff. But it's something that I'm hoping that, again, when I'm long gone, I'm be proud to say that, like, I died trying to make that happen, because it was built inside me to figure out how to make that thing work. But to see something, I think this is exactly what Erica and Franchessa said, that it's build something beyond our years type thing.
I love the how you all, in different ways and for different questions, have all talked about kind of seeing possibilities where other folks don't see those possibilities or don't see it as a barrier. So I love that idea of just being able to think about kind of the future state and figuring out a way to get there. And that ultimately is what's going to create change as we know it. How can our community, and by our community, I'll say the Philadelphia ecosystem, how can we help you in your business today? What's your ask of us? Oh, and Patrick, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think it's I would love to see that line get erased, because I think there's benefits on both sides. And I think that means that we proactively from Delaware, which I embrace as hard as I can because I love the state, make an effort to go and interact with Philadelphia. Because I'll tell you what, one of the things that happened when I landed back from San Francisco is we were all doing that. It was right around the time of HQ2, the whole Amazon, let's all get Amazon there. And when we were when the requirements were in a 25-mile radius, you had to have check. And we put a circle around that. And that includes the Philadelphia airport, it includes Wharton, it includes Drexel, it includes the art museums, it includes Rehoboth. I mean, well, that's a little farther than 25, but all the different things that, like, how could you not like this area? And those opportunities are going to come up again. Like, we look at it with like lab space and everything else like that. And we can grow the region. There doesn't have to be that line there, that we can benefit from both sides. And I don't think it's, I think that would be the best thing that we could do, is just to reach across the border and get involved in each other's state even more.
I love that example. And I think that folks in Philadelphia through that learned how to start to work together collaboratively, because
Absolutely,
I'm not confident that as an ecosystem, we were working together as much. And so, 2.5 years later, we should now kind of think about how do we extend that. If we've figured out how to work together as an ecosystem, obviously tonight has seemed, that there is a very strong ecosystem in Delaware. So now bringing those two ecosystems together.
Yeah. And
Erica, your thought, or Patrick, do you have a follow-up?
Sure. So I would say the biggest thing would be the mindset shift. Lots of action and lots of activity will follow a mindset shift. And that's the mindset shift that Patrick articulated, which is erasing the line. I would put it in its positive form of defining it as the Delaware Valley region or the Mid-Atlantic region or something that instead of it being Philadelphia or Delaware, people's default mode of thinking and mindset is that bigger circle that Patrick had. Because then when you start with that mindset of, the ecosystem is this, bigger region, then of course all the decision making and action and things will flow from that, right? That we're all in this together. I realize that, there's jurisdictional lines and all kinds of stuff that make things, more elaborate to navigate perhaps, but with the mindset shift, it becomes a navigation worth doing.
That's terrific. I love the mindset shift. Franchessa.
Yeah, so me personally, I would really like to see more press picked up in both locations. So, in the startup world, you tend to see a lot of your Delaware folks and how they're how they're doing, how they're making strides, but I never see any startup news, very little, from the Philadelphia area. And, I would assume that they don't see as much of ours either. So, something like that, something maybe even a regional, type of newsletter or something that was inclusive of everything that was going on.
That's great. That's such a actionable solution, and folks are echoing in the chat that's a great suggestion. All of the points have been really helpful. So I will end. I will also ask the audience if they have any question to put it in chat. So I always like to end my panel conversations on a lightning round, and so. We all know that the president-elect is from Delaware. And if you had the opportunity to, be in a room with him tomorrow, what's the one word you would use to describe the Delaware innovation ecosystem? Erica.
Vibrant.
Patrick.
I'd say thanks, Professor. Even though that's two, I'd make it all one because he taught me, and that means to show how close it is. But it's such we all know Joe Biden because he's local here, so
Yes.
He always had an impact on us. So, anyways, yeah.
That is true. He always confused my parents and my grandparents, though. which ones went with which?
Yeah.
That's funny. Franchessa.
I would say agile.
Mm-hmm.
Agile. If I add another round to this, which is to say, what's the one thing that the Delaware innovation ecosystem needs? And Franchessa, I'm sorry that I added a C. Chessa, you get to start because you ended the last one. So we'll go reverse order.
I was going to say money. But, honestly, yeah, one word would be money, but specifically, more access to VCs and angel and stuff like that. People who understand capital.
Patrick?
That was the first thing I thought of too. And that usually happens when you have a big explosion of a great company that went public or something in the local ecosystem. Mm-hmm. But that's the one thing I would point to.
Erica?
I may be a hammer looking for nails. So I'll preface with that because I'm the business person who came to a scientific organization, right, to give it the commercial skill and insight that it needed to move from a scientific project to a game-changing company. And I would say that Delaware probably needs more of that in terms of there are a lot of scientists and a lot of scientist-driven companies that could really benefit from more business skill and business-oriented folks who've been around the block who want to lend their skills and insights to someone's scientifically driven technology startup.
Wow, that's a great answer and great to hear. And it was interesting. One of the panelists earlier today was talking about one of the biggest transitions for them in their leadership was going from thinking like a scientist to thinking like a business person, and that was a big pivot for them. So
Yeah.
I think it's pretty consistent in terms of some of that, and interesting to hear from a need for the ecosystem, because that certainly presents an opportunity and is a potential opportunity to think about collaborative folks as well. I think many folks in Philadelphia would also echo money as the one word answer as to what the Philadelphia ecosystem also needs. I think that, more often than not, when people come to Venture Cafe for the first time, they're often looking for capital and they think they need capital. And the reality is, we usually ask them a lot of really good questions and quickly learn that it's less about, they may or may not need capital, but sometimes it's, asking them the right questions to figure out what they need at that particular point. Not to say that they don't need capital at some point in the future. This has been an incredible panel. I completely appreciate everything that you all shared from an insight standpoint. Appreciate your time. It has been a wonderful opportunity to showcase the Delaware ecosystem to Philadelphia. And I think one of my colleagues is going to jump back in to wrap things up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would be said colleague. Thank you so much, Tracy.
The infamous Gary Johnson gets to appear on camera. He started the night, ends the night.
Yes. Thank you, Franchessa, Erica, Patrick. Thank you to everybody who made this night so awesome. I joined the Venture Cafe team back in July, and one of my conditions before joining the team was that we had to host a Delaware Takeover as a part of Venture Cafe Philadelphia, because I have gained so much from the Delaware innovation ecosystem, as well as the Philadelphia innovation ecosystem. So bridging that gap is definitely something that we wanted to contribute to. It's definitely a community effort. So it takes all of us coming together like we did tonight, having these really important conversations and keeping the collaborations going. So thank you to everyone. Huge thank you to Noah and Mike, because they were behind the scenes organizing much of this to make it a success as well. So thank you to both of them. Thank you to everybody for attending. Hopefully you join us for future Thursday gatherings as well. We will be taking next week off, but I am thankful that you all attended today, and hopefully we'll see you in December for some more amazing programming. With that being said, we are going to break back out to tables just for about 10 minutes or so, 8 minutes to be exact. And we actually have a live performance happening in Zoom at 8 o'clock. So we have a sponsored performer from CIC Philadelphia. If you go ahead and click the link that Emily just put in the chat, you'll be able to join us to watch Soraya provide us with a live presentation. So thank you again, and I hope to talk to you all very soon.